Paul Atreides was never meant to become the most powerful man in the universe, but everything around him pushed him toward that fate. It began when his family, House Atreides, was sent to the desert planet Arrakis, the only place where the most valuable substance in existence, spice, could be found. Spice meant power, control, and the ability to rule the galaxy. But what looked like an honor was actually a trap. Their enemies, the brutal Harkonnens, struck with overwhelming force. Paul's father was killed, his home destroyed, and in a single night, his entire world collapsed. With nothing left, Paul escaped into the endless desert alongside his mother. That's where he encountered the Freemen, the hardened people of Arrakis who had learned to survive in the harshest conditions imaginable. Among them was Chani, the woman who would become the center of his emotional world. As Paul lived with the Freemen, something inside him began to awaken. His visions grew stronger, showing him flashes of the future, visions of war, death, and destruction spreading across the universe, all in his name. At first, he resisted it. He didn't want to become the figure from prophecy. He didn't want to lead a holy war. But the deeper he went, the clearer it became that there was no escaping it. The Freemen began to see him as their Messiah, a chosen one who would lead them to freedom. And slowly, Paul accepted it. He trained, he fought, and he transformed into Muad'Dib, a leader feared by his enemies and worshipped by his followers. Driven by revenge and destiny, Paul led the Freemen into war. What followed was not just a battle, but a complete collapse of the old order. The Emperor was defeated, the Harkonnens were crushed, and Paul took the throne for himself. He had everything: power, control, and the ability to shape the future. But victory came with a price far greater than he expected. Because the moment he rose to power, the war didn't end, it spread. Across the universe, billions began to die in his name. The same future he had feared was now becoming reality, and no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't stop it. Paul could see the paths ahead, but every single one led to suffering. He had gained the power to see the future, but lost the ability to change it. As emperor, he was no longer just a man, he was a symbol. Worshipped like a god, feared like a weapon. And that distance began to affect the one thing he still cared about: his relationship with Chani. She saw what he was becoming, even when he tried to deny it. To her, he wasn't just the man she loved anymore. He was the center of a war that never should have existed. Paul tried to hold on to something human. He thought about a future beyond war, about children, about legacy. He imagined names like Ganima, a daughter strong like Chani, or Leto, a son carrying the wisdom of his father. But even those thoughts were overshadowed by fear, because deep down, he knew his children would inherit not just his power, but the consequences of it. And while he ruled the universe, he was never truly safe. Enemies gathered in the shadows. Political forces, secret organizations, and those who feared his power began to move against him. Because a man who can see the future is not just dangerous, he is uncontrollable. Chani reminded him of something simple, yet devastating. His father, Duke Leto, had ruled with honor. He never started a war. But Paul had become the reason for one of the deadliest conflicts in history. Not because he wanted to, but because he couldn't escape what he was destined to become. And that is the tragedy of Paul Atreides. He is not afraid to die. In fact, death might be the only escape left to him. But he knows he cannot die yet. Because the moment he falls, everything he built will collapse, and the chaos he tried to control will consume everything. In the end, Paul didn't just become a ruler. He became a prisoner of his own power, a man who could see every possible future, yet was trapped in the one he feared the most. He didn't just conquer the universe. He lost himself trying to save it.